Young people.
Siblings.
Steve Kerr doesn't like the young people. No, I don't like the young people.
I wonder, siblings.
Teenagers.
You and I were talking about siblings during the break.
Yeah.
I wonder if our next guest ever had any sort of a battle.
It's a great question.
Thank you. I'll let you ask it, Mark, because you're the lead dog.
No, you thought of it. You ask it. Kendra Andrews,
I'm
ESPN.
Scared.
No, go ahead and do it. You don't want to do it? I'll do it if you don't want to do it.
You do it because you're so good at the welcomes and all that.
Yeah, Kendra,
thanks for joining us.
Did you and Malika ever have massive fights when you were kids?
Name a sibling duo who hasn't, I think, right?
Thank you.
Go.
What was it over, Kendra? Was it like on the field of play? Was it over like extra helpings at dinner? What was the nature of the battleground?
It's a lot of toys. I think in our tween years, a couple things went missing from each other's closets. Those types of things. Those types of fights might still happen today, but we're a little bit more composed when we fight about the clothes now.
I like it.
Do you guys borrow each other's clothes still?
Absolutely. Again, ask any sister duo who doesn't. I guarantee you, all of us do.
No, it's not even just sisters. It's friends. I'll tell you the ones that because I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I get this like twice a month. Dad, my sweatshirt, what'd you do with it out of the laundry or this, that, and I get attacked for where is it? And of course I know I'm like, it's over at Tessa's house or whatever. Like I know where it is because you guys can't keep track of anything.
No, it's very true.
Yeah,
very true.
Yeah. Anyway, you had no idea that this is what
Thank you for sharing, though. I know. Appreciate that.
All right, that's all we wanted to ask you, Kendra. Thanks for coming on.
Best of luck.
Have a great day, you guys.
Yeah, all right, that was great. Find that on the Odyssey app. Anyway, hi, Kendra. How are the Warriors doing? Is everybody getting along?
From what I understand, everyone is getting along. There are no sibling fights in the Warriors locker room. I think really this season, something that they have been touting and very proud of is how good the off-court chemistry is, right? Because obviously that was a big issue last season. And so this season, they get along very well. Guys are hanging out with each other. They're lingering in the locker room, talking to each other. Everyone is very happy to be a part of this group this season.
Are you sensing any, I don't know if trepidation is the word, but some of the guys who are going to lose their minutes when Draymond comes back, is there any change of feeling in terms of the news that came out today about Draymond's maybe not so imminent return?
Well, I haven't seen or spoken to any of the players. They haven't been in the locker room since that news came out today. But I think the way that this team has been operating during Draymond's suspension, and I expect that they will continue to do until he is really game planning how to incorporate him back, is you just work with the people that you have in the room. You can't game plan for how are we going to do things when Draymond gets back because he's still not here right now. And the Warriors have a lot of issues and a lot of problems to figure out, during the suspension at this point when he's kind of ramping up and then even when he gets back. So it's just all about what is going to make us win. And so right now they're just kind of taking it one step at a time.
So all that said, and Kendra Andrews, ESPN, is with us. With that said, obviously when Draymond is back, he will have a role. Who do you think is auditioning the most right now to kind of keep what he's got currently when Draymond gets back?
I look at two guys. Jonathan Kuminga is obviously one of them. He was the guy who was put in that starting lineup in place of Draymond. And as Steve Kerr has continued to switch out that lineup, he is the one change, right, that has remained. So I look at a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, who could be the most directly impacted by Draymond's return. But in terms of just like their role staying the same, it's all of the young guys. It's a guy like Brandon Pajemski. Now, of course, with Gary Payton out for at least 3 more weeks, I think that gives Brandon a little bit more of a leash because he is also a guard. Steve Kerr said that he likes some of his perimeter defense. So I think he's a guy who'll still play a lot. And then also a guy like Trace Jackson-Davis. Obviously, he has been starting the past 2 games in place of Cavon Looney. But again, it's just the trickle-down effect of when you bring a guy like Draymond back, he'll be spending some time at the center position as he always has. So how is that going to affect another big like Trace?
How does that affect Cavon Looney, in your opinion? A guy who, as you mentioned, went from the starting lineup. Now he's been coming off the bench of late. Doesn't seem like he's having his best year early on. Does he stand to maybe lose some minutes as well when Draymond returns?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility, right? And again, it's just that trickle-down effect. If Draymond comes back and Trayce Jackson-Davis's minutes are getting scaled back, and Trayce Jackson-Davis's minutes at this moment are already taking over for Cavon Looney's minutes, then it is that trickle-down effect. And look, like I said before, right now the Warriors are just about trying to figure out how to win. And can we find a winning recipe? Trayce Jackson-Davis has been a bigger part of that right now. So as it stands, yeah, I think you could say Cavon Looney's role could be scaled back as well because he hasn't been playing as well. It's what you saw with Andrew Wiggins, and he wasn't playing well. His minutes were scaled back. Steve Kerr is just in hunt mode, and whatever it is that gets them a string of wins, that's what they're going to go with.
Kendra, we would love for you to kind of speak to your most recent article to our audience. And the title, the headline is Why Golden State's Youngsters Just Became So Important. So why did Golden State's youngsters just become so important?
I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but again, like you look at the past couple weeks, I guess really since Draymond was suspended, and even though the Warriors are like around the 500, they're kind of toggling between 500 or just below 500 team, the young players of Pajemski, Jackson Davis, Kuminga, and, at one point, Moses Moody, they were the bright spot next to Stephen Curry. It was Steph doing what Steph does. And you looked at all the other veterans. You looked at Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Cavon Looney, Draymond Green wasn't there, but all those other guys were struggling. And it was their young players who really gave them any kind of energy. And so as you move forward, one quote that Steve Kerr said that's in the article that really stood out to me was he said, when this team is fully healthy, there is a world in which these young guys keep their minutes. Like we just talked about Trayce Jackson-Davis, Jonathan Kuminga. There is a world that if we are winning, even if we're healthy, these guys will retain their starting jobs. They will retain their minutes because they have actually given us something that no one else is giving us right now, and we have to ride with that.
You mentioned at one point Moses Moody, and it feels like he's been in and he's been out and he's back in and he's back out. What do you think is the disconnect in terms of Moses' play and his ability to get on the floor?
I think it's tricky because the way the Warriors view him and his game is they want him to be an elite shooter. They want him to be a knockdown shooter. And they have two of the greatest of that. And then the Warriors have really liked the emergence of Brandon Pajemski and what he's been able to do in terms of just like being a ball handler, a little bit of his defense and stuff. And there always does just seem to be one odd man out. And right now that is Moses Moody. It is hard to figure out if he hasn't gotten that opportunity yet, when is it going to come? I think back to the Sacramento game over in Sacramento, either November, December, and Moses came in late in the game and he scored like all 11 of the Warriors' fourth quarter points. And then Steve pulled him and they ended up losing that game. And after that, the days after that, Steve was very hard on himself about that decision. He said, I should have left Moses in. That was such a bad decision by myself. And then the next several games, you saw Moses be a part of the rotation. And now he's kind of fallen out. So it is hard to figure out, okay, what is it going to take for Moses to really be able to cement himself? Because it's not like he's done anything wrong. They just have been leaning on other guys a bit more.
Kendra, who's the most likely Warrior to get traded?
Oh, man. I mean, there's a couple names that you could put on that list. I think that Moses Moody is one of them that you could at least see if you can package something. But at this point, you kind of just can go down. Moses is a tradable asset. Jonathan Kuminga is a tradable asset. Andrew Wiggins, he has a monster contract, but you look at those types of guys, and then obviously a big conversation is going to be about Klay, and he's on an expiring contract. What team would want to take on that type of deal? I don't know if there is a most likely to that I can say with confidence right now, but I do think that the Warriors have options of what they can put together. It's also just a matter of who they would want to exchange them for and what that person, what that team would require in exchange for that.
You didn't mention the name Draymond Green, which I found to be interesting because many fans are clamoring for him to be the one who's dealt. Would you say that Draymond's not likely to be traded because of Steph's affinity for him, or is it Draymond's currently very low trade value considering he hasn't played?
I mean, that could definitely be part of it, but you listen to what Mike Dunleavy Jr. has said, you know how Stephen Curry feels about Draymond. If you ask me who is the most likely to be traded, I would not say that Draymond Green is the most likely to be traded. I think there is a world in which it could happen. I think anything could happen at this point. And I understand how fans would probably be annoyed a little bit with some of his antics, and they haven't been that much worse without them than they were with him, right, to start the year. But in a team that is so loyal to their people, I think it would be a surprising move, really, if they traded Draymond. And again, I mentioned a guy like Andrew Wiggins' contract. Well, Draymond Green just also signed a big contract. So who can take that on? And again, what are you getting in return? Because they're not going to give up Draymond Green for nothing. It has to be for something big, something that the Warriors think could help them more than Draymond will help them. And I don't know if there is that.
Kendra Andrews, ESPN, with us here on Willard and Dibs. Kendra, what's your read on the situation around Steve Kerr's future? Like, why has nothing happened yet, you think?
I mean, I don't have a read on it, frankly. So I'm not going to speak too deeply on it. But I think a lot of these guys have seen, you start a season, nothing happens. You start a season, and at a certain point, you table it and you focus on the task at hand. Obviously, we saw how that happened with Bob Myers. And I think because of what happened with Bob Myers, people might get a little antsy and say, well, if Steve Kerr didn't come up with a new contract just like Bob, then he's going to walk just like Bob. I don't necessarily think that that's the case, but I think that, you want to see a lot of what happens and how this season plays out. If the Warriors decide for up top as an organization that the dynasty is over and it's time to move on, then you change up a lot of things. But at the same time, I know how much they appreciate Steve Kerr's coaching, and, he needs to figure out what he wants as well. But I don't think that there's too much of a read to have on that right now.
Would you put that same answer applied to the Klay Thompson situation, a guy who has been a forever Warrior so far, but he's in the final year of his deal? Would you also say that it's in season and both sides are just trying to focus on basketball?
I mean, I think to a point, it's different though with players and coaches, because we were just talking about trading, right? And Klay is a guy who could be traded, right? When you don't re-sign a player, you let them go for nothing. It's different than wanting to get something back. With them not coming up with a contract, right? I mean, it's been reported on of both sides couldn't come to an agreement. There is a desire for him to come back, and he wants to come back. But yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point you table those discussions. But again, with a player, it's different, because unlike a coach, or unlike Steve will say, who isn't going to get fired in the middle of the year or anything like that, a player could be traded in the middle of the year. And so it just puts a little bit different context around the conversation for Klay.
Kendra, with Jonathan Kuminga, you have a quote in your article where he says, quote, "I see the two timelines for sure." But that also comes as he's using the podium at times to grumble a little bit about playing time and not fully understanding his role. So what's your thought there? Do you sense that he's becoming more comfortable with the process?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't heard him grumble as much in the past, right, as he has last season before, right? His first 2 years in the league. I think he's out of place, especially the past couple of weeks where he really is getting the minutes and getting the runway, where he's figuring things out. Teams are figuring things out. There is an understanding, though, as we talked about Draymond coming back, whenever Gary is healthy, that things will have to shuffle again. And naturally, there would be a frustration of if you're putting everything out there and then someone comes back and your role gets decreased again, especially when it's been a cyclical thing. But what I've observed from Jonathan this season, I think he's matured immensely. I think he has a much more, I don't know what the right word is, but just like a balanced head on his shoulders this season. And I think he saw how things played out in the playoffs last season. He saw the perception of himself that people were getting from the way that he spoke or his body language on the bench. And he's really tried to remedy that this year.
Kendra Andrews, ESPN, great stuff. Love the article. Thank you for coming on, and you and Malika be nice to each other, okay?
Thanks so much, you guys. Hey, you guys be nice to each other, too.
Well, no promises. Yeah. All right, thanks, Kendra. There she goes, Kendra Andrews, with regard to everything going on with the Warriors.